Well, it's our favorite time of the year. A time of candy corn and pumpkin beer. When everything goes bump in the night, and we get to enjoy a list fright. Welcome to the History Goes Bump Halloween Spooktacular Special. Welcome to the History Goes Bump Halloween Spooktacular Special. Welcome to the History Goes Bump Halloween Spooktacular Special. Welcome to the History Goes Bump Halloween Spooktacular Special. Whoa, a Halloween Spooktacular Special. Whoa, a Halloween Spooktacular Special.
Happy Halloween!
Oh, Kelly, it is our Halloween special for 2024. I'm so excited.
Me too. Favorite time of the year.
Absolutely. It is the best time of the year. And we always like to do like a little bit of a theme for our Halloween specials. On this one, we're doing 80s horror movies.
Whoop whoop! Sorry, you youngins. Hopefully you can clue in, and if you haven't seen some of these, make sure you go back and do so.
Yeah, I have a feeling that a lot of our younger listeners have probably seen a lot of these movies, if they're horror connoisseurs. We're Gen X, so we might be a little bit biased when it comes to thinking that the 1980s is the greatest of everything, music, movies, you name it, culture.
We're not biased. It just is.
Hair.
Where's my Aquanut?
Yes,
Hang on.
hairspray. They had
Higher
the best hairspray.
Higher the hair, closer to God.
Well, and that comes into play with these movies because there is some big hair in these movies.
Yes, there is.
So what we're going to do, we had asked in our Spooktacular crew people's favorite 1980s horror movies, and they gave us a list. And we decided to do this not in like the best to the worst or our favorite to the least favorite. We're going to do it in chronological order. So hopefully we're going to mention a movie that you really like from the 1980s. If not, I don't know, holler at us, boo at us.
Boo!
Are you ready to get this started?
I'm ready. Horror movies are a Halloween tradition. Many of us spend Halloween night pursuing a good scare via the medium of film. There have been dozens of horror subgenres, and many of these hit their stride in the 1980s. In our opinion, the 1980s was the pinnacle of horror movies. There have been many great movies since, but there was just something special about that decade. Join us for a fun conversation about the horror movies of the 1980s on the HGB Halloween Special 2024.
Kelly, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, this is what we did. From teenager on, even as an adult, I would go over to my sister's house because we lived in an apartment, so we didn't have kids come to trick or treat. So we'd go to her house and hand out candy to the kids who were trick or treating. And we'd always bring like 2 or 3 horror movies with us and just binge them through the night.
Same. Binging horror movies is the best, although in my household, we pretty much just set up a haunted garage and had all kinds of critters, really large snakes, and creep factor galore to entertain the little kiddos that came around.
So you basically were your own horror movie.
We definitely were.
Anything with big snakes like pythons would be a horror movie to me.
It was a boa, but yeah.
George Méliès, I think is how you say his last name, produced what is credited with being the first horror movie in 1896. The movie was called Le Manoir du Diable, which translates to The House of the Devil. It also sometimes is called The Haunted Castle. This is what one would call a short, and we mean short. It was only 3 minutes long.
Oh, wow. Very short.
Kind of hard to call that a film, but okay.
Although some commercials are longer these days, too. That's crazy.
That's true. The film featured animated skeletons, ghosts, cauldrons, and, of course, the devil. Focusing on the supernatural was the MO of early horror movies from 1900 to 1920. And while our premise for this episode is that the 1980s were the finest era for horror movies, most film scholars deem the 1920s and 1930s as the golden age of horror. And we could almost agree with that considering Nosferatu came out in 1922, And my beloved Universal monster movies.
Indeed.
Launched with Dracula and Frankenstein in 1931, The Mummy was in 1932, and The Invisible Man in 1933.
I mean, it really was the golden era.
That is the golden age for sure.
Hammer horror films would hit their stride in the 1950s, and it dominated the horror scene with stars like Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, and Barbara Shelley. And Alfred Hitchcock started producing hit horror films at the same time with Vertigo and Rear Window, and then into the 1960s with Psycho and The Birds. During the 1960s, cheap horror movies were produced with a few hitting gold, like George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead in 1968.
Which I will say is my favorite horror movie of all time.
We need to watch that. We haven't watched it this season.
I know.
That movie grossed $30 million on a $100,000 budget. Giallo movies also started in Italy in the 1960s. Devil-inspired movies, particularly about possession, found a home in the 1970s with The Omen and The Exorcist. And then our decade arrived and slasher movies really took off. But the movies of the 1980s covered all the different subgenres of horror.
Well, Kelly, we should probably start in 1980 and with one of the best, The Shining.
Indeed.
The Shining was one of Stanley Kubrick's masterpieces and took Stephen King's novel of the same name to the next level, with amazing performances by Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall. And of course, I think everybody knows at this point that Shelley Duvall gave the kind of performance that she did because Stanley Kubrick was horrible to her.
Yes, very much so.
He worked her hard. He wouldn't let her sleep. He kept on top of her. And so I think she really, she comes across as neurotic and just anxiety filled and everything. And I think a lot of it was real. You've seen this movie, obviously.
Obviously.
I think we've watched it together, haven't we?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And then we just watched Dr. Sleep not too long ago, which is
we
the
did.
sequel, I guess you could say. And boy, was it good.
It was. It was very good.
This was Kubrick's first foray into the horror genre. Did you know that? First time he ever made a horror movie.
I was not aware.
And this is what I would say features a slow burn ghost story. Many memorable scenes found their way into pop culture and continue today with the line, "Here's Johnny," to Red Rum.
The way you said it.
Did it come across as Johnny Carson?
Yeah, Ed McMahon. Here's Johnny. But I mean, it was pretty much in the same
It was very
affect.
similar. Everybody loves Red Rum. And, I think we all thought we were very clever when we were kids and we were like, oh, you know what? That's murder backward.
Everybody loves Red Rum. Are you going to murder me in my sleep?
I might.
Uh-oh.
Better take off in a big wheel.
I can pedal real fast.
There's also the twin girls in blue dresses standing in the hallway. And then there's that flood of blood coming from the elevator.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson played Jack Torrance, who was an alcoholic, aspiring novelist who slowly is descending into madness throughout the entire film, which ultimately ended with him trying to kill his wife and son. Throughout the movie, he's plagued by visions of ghosts, as is his son Danny, who has a gift called The Shining, which is what the book is named for and the movie's named for. The Shining appears to be something like a telepathic ability. The music is great. The first scene when they're driving the car through the snow and the mountains and it's like, boom, 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 boom. You're just like, it just sets the mood.
It does. It elicits the proper feeling.
Yeah, it gives you a real sense of dread, and the location of a remote hotel in the winter with only the Torrance family watching over it is just screaming for something creepy to happen. It only adds fuel to this movie that in reality, Stephen King had stayed at the haunted Stanley Hotel in Colorado and had his own paranormal experiences there. And that's what inspired this whole story to begin with. And he had done the same thing with his wife. They stayed at the Stanley Hotel as it was closing up for the season, and they were the only people in the hotel. So he had the run of the place. How cool would have that been? This, of course, brings up the question of whether there really are ghosts at the hotel or if it's Jack's mental illness making them up. Of course, since his son is seeing stuff, I think there is something going on there. Whatever Kubrick meant for us to believe, he directed a great movie that stays with you.
Yes, it does.
The Changeling, have you seen this one? This is from 1980 as well.
I have.
And you did see, because I rewatched this not too long ago, and you did get to see a couple of the scenes from it when you were on your break from work. This movie was based on a true event that happened in Colorado at a home near Cheeseman Park, so I really loved that.
Of course you did.
My mom actually
Right around the corner.
Yeah, well, my mom actually wrote a book about the Cheeseman Park neighborhood, and this is where all the great mansions are in Denver, and we've covered Cheeseman Park on one of our Haunted Cemeteries episodes. This is the one where they didn't take all of the bodies out before they made the park.
Didn't take all the bodies out?
No, some of them are still
dear.
there. This was a supernatural film out of Canada, co-written by Russell Hunter, who based the screenplay on paranormal experiences he had while living at the Henry Treat Rogers Mansion in Denver. The movie itself is set in Seattle and tells the story of a New York City composer who moves into a haunted house in Seattle. The star of the film is the great George C. Scott, and he does a great job with this highly, I think, underrated film. It's one of the best haunted house movies out there and still gives the chills today. The opening sequence is hardcore, leaving Scott's character a widower and childless. That opening scene, his wife and child, there's a car accident. It's awful. And the seance scene is one of the greatest in film history. There's a lot of places to watch it for free, like Tubi, if you guys want to check it out. Now, that Rogers Mansion no longer stands, but it had been built in 1892 in the Federal architectural style and was painted white. It was a really cool-looking mansion. Rogers passed away in 1922, and his wife Kate lived in the home until her death in 1931, and the house passed on to their niece, Frances, because they didn't have any kids. Frances passed away, and her husband rented out the mansion, and that is how Russell Hunter came to rent it in 1968. He had encounters with a ghost cat and heard this continual bouncing sound coming from the attic. He couldn't figure out what in the attic was causing the noise, so he had an architect join him for a walkthrough, and they discovered a sealed-off stairway behind a second-story closet that led to a smaller attic space, and when they opened the door, a small red ball bounced down the stairs.
Ruh-roh.
Yeah. The noise stopped for a while, but when it returned, he invited over a group of friends who all heard the sound, and when they opened the door, a red ball bounced down the stairs once again. Where are these red balls coming from?
Not creepy at all.
Hunter claimed he found a journal, and a young boy named Eric, whose age changed every time he's told the story, so he's like 7, 8, 10, was locked away in the attic as a sickly boy, and he died there. There was never any proof of the story, and the mansion was demolished in 1969 to make room for apartments. People claim to see the ghost of a boy still hanging out at the corner where the house had once been. So if you've seen The Changeling, it's very much based on this. George C. Scott's character starts hearing this like pounding, bouncing, weird sound in the house. And that's how everything gets started. And he ends up in this attic space. He finds this journal. And it goes back to this boy. For some reason, he's the one who's supposed to inherit all the money in the family. But he only gets it if he manages to make it to the age of 21. And he's very sickly. So his dad's like, oh, he's never going to make it. And somehow he must think he's going to get the money if the kid makes it to 21. I don't know why he thinks it's going to be his money.
Right.
But he kills him, murders him, drowns him in the tub, and then he replaces him. And that's why it's called The Changeling, because he replaces him with another boy who grows up to be successful and this rich politician and stuff. So great haunted house movie. Encourage you to check that out. We have another one from 1980.
Friday the 13th. The original Friday the 13th movie dropped in 1980, as Diane said, and launched the 12-film franchise.
It's a lot of movies.
It sure is. This was a slasher film with the main character being Jason Voorhees, the embodiment of a little boy who drowned while away at summer camp due to the negligence of the camp counselors. This first film reveals the killer to be his mother, but subsequent films feature a very grown-up Jason. We prefer Michael Myers to Jason, and clearly the Friday the 13th movie was inspired by John Carpenter's film. Jason is pretty good at coming up with some unique ways to kill people. This was one of Kevin Bacon's first films.
I don't really care for slashers. I hate to say that, but I don't like a lot of gore.
I'm the same way.
So that's why I really like Halloween, because you really don't see a lot of blood. So I'm not a big fan of the Friday the 13th. I've seen a handful of them, but I certainly haven't seen all of them.
It's not something that I like to rewatch. So yes, I've seen them as well, and I have the same issue with all the gore.
Now, while I just said that I really don't like gore in slasher movies, man, do I love me some Ash. And I love The Evil Dead.
Yes.
In 1981, we got The Evil Dead, and then Evil Dead 2 also came out in the 1980s. We're just going to talk about the first one here. Bruce Campbell was an unknown when he starred in Evil Dead, if he only knew.
Right.
Now he's a household name for those of us who love horror movies, and particularly the ones featuring zombies. Although it's kind of hard to say if the Evil Dead are zombies. They're just like the undead that have risen up, I guess you could say. So,
Which would be zombies.
I guess, yeah, that's true.
They're just different than, Walking Dead zombies or something like that.
The film was written and directed by Sam Raimi and was a huge success, launching the careers of Raimi and Campbell. And they made it on a shoestring, and it wasn't expected to do anything. And boy, was it a hit. This is one of the largest cult films to ever be made, and not only has had sequels and remakes, but an awesome TV series that we were bummed to see come to an end after 3 seasons.
I know.
Ash vs. Evil. Love it. I've watched it twice now. I just love it. Campbell plays Ash Williams, who ends up at a remote cabin in the Tennessee woods with a group of friends. They discover a Sumerian version of the Book of the Dead and a tape. They play the tape, which has all these incantations and stuff in it. And they read from the book and unleash the evil dead, which appear to possess trees and Ash's friends. So it's not like we're seeing a whole bunch of new dead people. It's living people that kind of get possessed by these things. And then they end up dead and they're still possessed. In the end, all of Ash's friends end up dead, and we're left wondering what happened to him until part 2 came out later in the decade.
And who doesn't love dogs?
Oh, I love dogs.
Do you like werewolves?
I don't know if I like them as werewolves, though.
Maybe an American Werewolf in London?
Now, hey, who doesn't love an American werewolf? And look, he's getting around. He's hanging over in London.
Circa 1981. Obviously, this is a werewolf movie, and it features the most amazing practical effects transformation of a man into a werewolf in any film ever made.
And I'll say, fight me on that one, because that is my claim. The transformation scene in that thing is amazing, the practical effects.
David Naughton stars in this John Landis film as a backpacker in England who is attacked by a werewolf. His character, who is also named David, turns into a werewolf with the next full moon. His friend Jack, who had been backpacking with him, had been killed by the werewolf. The ghost of Jack appears to David, letting him know that he is indeed a werewolf, and that Jack's spirit will walk in limbo until this bloodline is killed. He wants David to kill himself. David can't kill himself and ends up killing 6 people as a werewolf. He eventually is killed by the police in his werewolf form. The film was a critical and commercial success.
And who doesn't love that song, Werewolves of London?
It is good.
Where the movie got some of its inspiration from, as a matter of fact. And why don't we just keep with the werewolf thing?
Ow!
Oh, yeah. Okay. There's no full moon, is there? Are you going to eat me, Kelly? Please.
It's too early for that.
I'm in my 50s. I'm a little stringy, chewy. Yeah, you don't want, no.
Sinewy?
Yeah, I
Is
don't
that
have
what
a
you
lot.
meant?
I don't have a lot
I'm
of fat on my
stringy.
body.
I'm stringy.
Yeah, whatever. 1981 also brought us The Howling. Dee Wallace stars and portrays a news anchor named Karen White, who is traumatized by her experience of being stalked by a serial killer. She and her husband go away to a place called the Colony for her to recover from the experience. Karen eventually figures out that the entire colony is made up of werewolves who can shapeshift at will. So now we're jumping from the, hey, this is the way it's supposed to be with a werewolf. Got to have a full moon. They only turn with the full moon. Oh no, these guys, they could do it whenever they want to.
That's convenient.
So they might be more like skinwalkers, but they didn't really talk about skinwalkers back then. She manages to escape with a friend who came to rescue her, but as they leave, Karen is bitten by her husband, who has become a werewolf. Karen later transforms into a werewolf on live TV, and her friend shoots and kills her. Rob Bottin created the amazing makeup special effects in this film, which was directed by Joe Dante. I haven't seen that movie in a really long time.
There's so many movies that are from the past that we need to watch.
Yeah. Poltergeist. This one, I mean, who hasn't seen Poltergeist? If you guys listening haven't, come on now. 1982. This taught us all the lesson, and we talk about it on the show all the time, that you don't move the headstones from a graveyard without moving the bodies as well.
They didn't move the bodies.
Yeah. When you do that, you get the poltergeist effect. That's why we have that terminology now.
Yeah, no bueno.
For many of us, this was our first foray into paranormal investigation because they brought paranormal investigators in. Imagine if those guys had had the kind of equipment we did.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And there were things that happened in this movie when we were kids talking about it. It was like, whoa, did you see that steak? It crawled across the countertop on its own. And you're just like, ew. And then it was full of maggots, or the chicken was full of maggots or something.
That's enough.
The film stars Jo Beth Williams, Craig T. Nelson, and Heather O'Rourke as little Carol Ann, who gives us all the memorable line, "They're here," after staring at a television full of snow one night. If my kid does this, I'm going to throw her out the window.
Great.
You are a creepy little possessed thing. Get out of here.
And a lot of our listeners might not even know what that means, that the TV was snow. Basically static, and it's black and white, shivering all over the screen.
Yeah, there was a time where the TV
Back in
late
the
at
olden
night.
days. Back in the olden days, they'd play the national anthem, and then you'd have like a rainbow screen.
Yeah, these color blocks would come on, and then it would be snow after that. And it was like, this is the end of our programming for today. Now you can watch TV 24/7. You could watch multiple TVs 24/7. Carol Ann is the youngest in the Freeling family, who has just moved into a planned community in California. Shortly after Carol Ann's revelation of "they're here," the family starts experiencing paranormal activity in the house, and much of it is downright frightening. You got the chairs that just stack themselves up on the table, and none of us can forget the creepy, demonic clown doll that tries to strangle Carol Ann's brother. That has to be one of the most terrifying scenes, and we all are afraid of dolls, especially clown dolls. That doll is like the ultimate.
The combo of the two worst ones.
Oh, just awful. This is also where we learn, if you count for there's lightning until you get to the thunder, it'll tell you how far away the storm is. I still do that to this day. Carol Ann herself is abducted to inside the house by the spirits. We don't really know where she is. She just ends up in a closet, and she's in the house somewhere. The family is forced to bring in help, and they do eventually get Carol Ann back and run screaming from the house as coffins and skeletons start erupting from the ground all throughout their new neighborhood. Before this all happens, Nelson's character named Steven finds out from his boss, with whom he's developed this community, that they only move the headstones from a cemetery they built over. So I remember a very memorable scene there where he's like, "But you didn't move the bodies, did you?" Steven Spielberg wrote the screenplay, and the film was directed by Tobe Hooper. Despite being a horror film, it was the 8th highest grossing film of 1982. Usually horror movies don't do that well, but it did amazing.
Of course, I'm sure you know the little fun fact that they actually used real skeletons.
Oh, yes, indeed. The stars were not happy to find out about that, especially Jo Beth Williams. She's like, wait a minute, I was floating around in that pool full of muddy water, and those were real skeletons? Yikes.
Next, we have the Slumber Party Massacre, circa 1982. This 80s slasher film was very unique because it was entirely written and directed by women. The director was Amy Holden Jones, and Rita Mae Brown wrote the screenplay. This is a slasher film centered around a group of girls having a slumber party that is interrupted by a drill-wielding killer.
Interesting weapon.
Ew. Brown had meant this to be a parody of the slasher genre, but the film was made from a serious angle. 3 of the girls managed to make it to the end of the film, which is different than most that ended with one final girl. There's a lot of comedy in this one, and it has a cult following and also had sequels.
This is actually the first movie on this list that I have not seen.
We need to break that out.
I guess so. Creepshow. I love this one. This is from 1982. It couldn't be anything but great, with director George Romero helming a screenplay by Stephen King.
Indeed, I agree.
I believe this is the first screenplay that Stephen King had written. I'm not for sure about that, but I think it is. Tom Savini did the special effects. The film is an anthology that comes across as though reading a comic book and was inspired by the EC horror comics King and Romero grew up reading in the 1950s. And these carried over into the 1970s as well, because I remember reading these. These were the Tales from the Crypt and that kind of thing. The anthology features 5 stories with very weird creatures and stories, and it inspired a reboot series on Shudder, which is amazing as well. I know we've watched a couple seasons of that.
We have.
Stephen's son, Joe Hill, who is, I think, a way better at this horror thing than his dad. Don't tell Stephen I said that.
I don't disagree with you.
He also appears in the film as the young boy reading the comic in the intro and the outro. That is his son. I did not realize that. Probably the worst of the 5 stories is They're Creeping Up on You, because it features cockroaches, and a lot of them.
Ew.
And now a little break for a word about one of our sponsors. Here's another one I absolutely love, The Thing. This is from 1982. This is one of John Carpenter's masterpieces and is a remake of 1951's The Thing from Another World, which was based on the 1938 John W. Campbell Jr. novella, Who Goes There? The film starred Kurt Russell and was filmed in Alaska, British Columbia, and L.A. The Thing features a story about a group of American research scientists at a remote base in Antarctica who take in a sled dog and realize too late that the dog harbors some kind of creature within it. This beast assumes the shape of its victims and picks everybody off one by one. The creature is eventually destroyed by Russell's character, but things don't end well as he's left to freeze to death since he blew up the base. The practical effects in this film are amazing, and they're pretty gross too. I mean,
They are pretty gross.
when the dog is like, it's like he's inside out. I don't know. It's like,
okay, moving on. Keep on keeping on.
I know. Again, I hate gore, so why am I talking about
I'm the
it?
same way, especially when it has animals involved. Now on to Sleepaway Camp from 1983. We've never seen this one, but the story centers around a girl named Angela who loses her family in a boating accident. She goes to live with her aunt and cousin, and the aunt sends them to Camp Arawak. Violent accidents start claiming the lives of the campers, and soon it is revealed that a crazy killer is committing the acts. Although people claim that this film was copying Friday the 13th, it has become a cult classic, and is credited with having one of the most shocking twist endings in the horror genre.
When I saw that, I went, well, we're going to have to watch it. Because I've never really wanted to see it. Again, I'm not a real big Friday the 13th person, but I was like, ooh, just for the shocking twist, I'd kind of like that. It's kind of like The Sixth Sense.
I'm game.
I mean, you want to watch that movie for the ending all by itself. Children of the Corn. This is what made us all fear going by those cornfields out in Nebraska and stuff. From 1984, it's like, what is in that corn? Really, the 1980s was the pinnacle for Stephen King, because here is another Stephen King story. And it is his story, which had the same name. It was directed by Fritz Kiersk. The film features Peter Horton and Linda Hamilton. They're a couple traveling through rural Nebraska to Seattle. In Nebraska, they meet a group of children who revolted under the leadership of two boys named Isaac and Malachi. During this revolt, the children sacrificed all the adults in the town. They did this sacrifice for an entity they call He Who Walks Behind the Rows. Yee! In the end, the couple torches the cornfield and escapes with two of the children who hadn't joined the cult. It's kind of like the Village of the Damned. Anything that has, these creepy kids who are like crazy. I'm already afraid of children, so I love this one. Now, I got you to watch this, right? Did I get you to watch this with me? Night of the Comet. This is from 1984 as well. Classic 80s movie.
This is another zombie movie, and this one is set in the middle of Valley Girl Central in Southern California. Like, totally.
Gag
Gag
with
me
an
with a
artichoke.
spoon. With an artichoke? What the heck?
Kelly, where were you born?
Down in California.
And that would be in?
Southern California.
And where was I born?
Southern California.
So we're basically Valley Girls too.
We're Valley Girls. Like, totally.
Like, totally.
Oh my God.
Oh. Like the other day, I was totally going down the road. And then, oh my God.
Oh my. I just can't even revisit that.
That makes this movie a lot of fun.
The premise is that a comet passes through the sky and everybody who's outside gets turned to dust. The few people who survived were exposed to radiation and they start to become zombies. Catherine Mary Stewart and Kelly Maroney star as Regina and Samantha, who are sisters that fight for survival in post-apocalyptic Los Angeles. I remember thinking it would be kind of cool to have the run of the planet. We're left to believe that the sisters go on to have a...
You can say it. We're going to say a curse word because it goes with the movie.
Your mouth is frozen from your shake.
I know.
Take a curse word.
Can I have another glass?
We're left to believe that the sisters go on to have bitchin' lives as they help to repopulate the planet. This movie is worth the watch for the hair and clothes alone.
Exactly.
Talk about Aquanet.
And this is kind of like what The Walking Dead would have been like if it was set in the Valley Girl. Take The Walking Dead and put it in the Valley Girl because you got them fighting zombies and basically you have the run of the planet. So it's like you just go into the stores and get whatever you want. You can just take whatever clothes you want. And everything seems really cool until you realize, well, once the food spoils on the counter, we are going to be like...
Go in and steal all the clothes from Wet Seal and all the other mall shops.
Kelly, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
3, 4.
Better lock your door. All right, Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. What a great movie. I remember watching this movie for the first time at a sleepover when I was 13, which makes me think, what parent let us watch this movie when we were 13?
Yeah, I didn't watch this. I wasn't even graduating elementary school until 85, but later I did.
Well, I think our parents were a little bit more lax back then about this stuff. I don't know, because now I think about it and I'm like, how in the hell? I was a freshman in high school, but still. This totally left me with nightmares for 2 weeks. I mean, I remember having nightmares for 2 weeks. I would see Tina in that body bag reaching out towards me in these dreams. It was
Oh, no.
yeah. A Nightmare on Elm Street was produced under New Line Cinema, leading to the company being referred to as the house that Freddy built. That's how great this movie was. The Freddy refers to Freddy Krueger, who was portrayed by Robert Englund. Krueger is an undead child killer that is horribly burned and has a glove hand with finger knives. He comes to people in their dreams and kills them while they are dreaming. The final girl in this movie is portrayed by Heather Langenkamp, whose name is Nancy. Johnny Depp has his film debut in this one. This first movie launched the franchise, which has 9 films and a television series. Wes Craven wrote and directed the slasher, and he claimed that the story was inspired by a series of newspaper articles sharing stories about Hmong refugees who fled to the United States from Cambodia. These refugees suffered from something called Asian death syndrome. They had disturbing nightmares, and some were so bad that the refugees died. So it's like they just had heart attacks in their sleep.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
So, yeah, what a great story to come up with. And I actually, now you can buy a Freddy Krueger mask and the outfit and the glove and everything.
What did you do, Diane?
I did it myself.
You did?
Yeah, I decided to go as Freddy Krueger before they had all that stuff. And I actually got like the fake skin that you can make your face into. So I did my own makeup. And then I had a garden glove that was brown. And I took cardboard and made the blades. And then I put tin foil over them to make them like they were knives. And then I taped them onto the glove. So then I had his glove too.
So creative.
It was very creative. And it's one of the only costumes that I've worn in my entire life. I did not get a picture of it.
What is wrong with you?
I don't know. So I don't
Scratch that.
have...
What's wrong with your parents?
Exactly. And I wore this to the church because, our church back in the
my.
day, now churches only do the trunk and treat thing. But when we were kids, the churches hosted Halloween parties and we would bob for apples and do all the cool stuff, which we still should be doing at church. But anyway, I wore it to the church Halloween party that
And
year.
how was that taken?
Probably as well
Fart
as...
in church? Oh, what?
Yeah, I went over like a fart church. No, but it probably went over as well as the time that I dressed as a, I won't say bum, I'll say hobo. And I actually... My parents had this old whiskey, flask bottle thing.
Oh, no, they didn't.
But it was glass.
Oh,
And I filled it up with, cream soda, because it kind of looks like whiskey.
My God.
And I was taking swigs out of that. I don't know how. They probably knew I was going to be lost for the church. Get that child out of this church.
All right. And so with all that frivolity, we're now on to Gremlins, which was released in 1984. Gremlins is a horror comedy starring Zach Galligan and Phoebe Cates, with Howie Mandel voicing Gizmo, the cute little bitty boy.
He is so cute.
He is. Just don't get him wet.
Don't get him wet. No,
Or feed
'cause
him
then
after
he's not going to
midnight.
be cute anymore.
Galligan plays Billy, who receives Gizmo, the Mogwai, from his father for Christmas. This is a cute furry creature that comes with 3 rules. If the rules aren't followed, it will spawn other Mogwai, which are mischievous and aggressive. The rules are, do not expose the creature to light, especially sunlight, which will kill it. Do not let it come in contact with water, and above all, never feed it after midnight. Gizmo gets water spilled on him, and several Mogwai are spawned. They later eat after midnight and form cocoons from which gremlins emerge, led by one named Stripe. I mean,
Who basically looks like Billy Idol.
Stripe was my favorite. If I had to have a favorite gremlin,
I mean, he's got a mohawk. You got to love him.
he was a badass.
He was.
Chaos ensues, as does death. All the gremlins are killed, and Gizmo is given back to his original owner. The Motion Picture Association complained about the film being too violent for a PG rating, and 2 months after the film was released, the rating of PG-13 was created.
Yeah, so I think they thought this is a movie kind of for kids because, I mean, Gizmo's so cute. They were like, wow, we really don't want like 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds watching this. So I had no idea, but that is when PG-13 came onto the scene. It was because of Gremlins. Fright Night. This is a great cult vampire movie. It came out in 1985. Tom Holland directs this vampire horror film featuring William Ragsdale as Charlie and Chris Sarandon as the vampire Jerry Dandridge. Roddy McDowall plays a horror TV host who hosts a program called Fright Night. Jerry the vampire moves in next to Charlie, and Charlie figures out what Jerry is, and a conflict develops between the two. Charlie enlists the help of McDowell's Peter Vincent, and the two are able to destroy Jerry and save Charlie's girlfriend, whom Jerry bit. The movie features a great new wave soundtrack and quickly became a cult classic, as I said. Next, we have The Return of the Living Dead. This is from 1985. It's set in Louisville, Kentucky. So right down the street from Waverly Hills. Louisville, Kentucky, and is described as a mordant punk comedy. This zombie movie brought about the idea that zombies feast on brains. So now when you see people going, brains, and they're talking about zombies, it came from this movie.
When you see people going brains?
I see them all the time, don't you?
Oh, God.
Oh, welcome to my world.
Mine isn't much to munch on, so...
A warehouse owner and 2 of his employees inadvertently reanimate a corpse with a toxic gas called trioxin. They manage to dismember and burn the corpse, but while burning it, they release the toxic gas into the air, and as it rains, corpses in a nearby cemetery reanimate. A group of friends fight the zombies with several getting killed. The military comes in and nukes the town, killing all the human survivors. Isn't that great? The military's here to save us. No, they're not.
Fantastic.
The film ends with more toxic rain falling and zombies screaming in their graves, so we're left to believe that, oh God, we're going to be run over by these things again. And then we get The Walking Dead.
And who doesn't love Aliens?
This is another one of my, I think, top 5. It's definitely my top 10 horror movies.
Absolutely. From 1986.
I like it better than the first one. Fight me!
I'm not fighting you. Kick my butt. No, I don't disagree. The creature for the Alien movies is unique and one of a kind, and in this sequel, we get to meet the one who birthed all these eggs, the Alien Queen.
And man, is she a cool creature.
She is. Not very pretty for a queen.
No.
The film starts with Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver, who's picked up by a salvage ship after she had been in stasis for 57 years. The company she worked for debriefs her and decides to send a team of colonial marines to destroy the aliens and the eggs left behind. At least, that is what they tell Ripley. They actually want to bring back a couple of aliens so that they can use them as weapons. Ripley also didn't know, because she's been asleep for half a century, that colonists were sent to this exo-moon to terraform a colony. When the Marines arrive, they find everybody dead except a little girl named Newt.
Or being cocooned. I mean, there are a few that are kind of alive, I guess you could say.
Yeah. The rest of the film features the Marines battling the aliens, and nearly all of them are killed. Ripley manages to get away with Newt and another Marine who is injured. But the Alien Queen hitched a ride, and we get to hear Sigourney Weaver yell, "Get away from her, you biatch!"
I love that scene.
I do too. When the alien goes after Newt. Such a great line. The Alien franchise has 7 films in its anthology, with the most recent being dropped this year in 2024.
Yeah, I believe it's Romulus. I haven't seen that one yet. The Hitcher. This one, I think I've seen it. I don't know for sure. I just remember a lot of kids talking about it. This came out in 1986. Rutger Hauer plays the Hitcher, who is a serial killer that stalks his victims. C. Thomas Howell plays the latest young motorist to get the Hitcher's attention. Howell picks up the Hitcher and is soon threatened by the killer, so he pushes him out of the car. As Howell drives from Chicago to San Diego, he continues to run into the Hitcher, so it's like he's just stalking him. He's everywhere. One of the most memorable scenes that I remember kids talking about in school was Howell finding a severed finger in his french fries. The Hitcher continues to play with Howell's character and eventually kills a bunch of cops and a waitress, played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, who tries to help Howell. In the end, Howell finally is able to run over the Hitcher and then shoots him a bunch of times with a shotgun. This is your lesson not to pick up hitchhikers. They could be hitchhiking ghosts too. And then there's Hellraiser from 1987. This was terrifying and disgusting. As I said, I don't like gore.
Right.
So, wow. Holy cow. This film was adapted from Clive Barker's novella, The Hellbound Heart, and features a mysterious puzzle box known as the Lament Configuration. A person who solves this puzzle box is in for a real treat, and I put that in quotation marks. The Cenobites are summoned, and these are some truly scary creatures. They all feature some kind of painful torture devices on their body because they are sadomasochistic beings, and they bring the one who has summoned them the pain of having their body hooked all over and then pulled apart.
Yeah, this one was tough for me.
I mean, I watched that, like, it's almost the opening scene, and it's like, I thought I was going to hurl. I was like, ooh, this is a bit much for me. And then it goes on to, this happens to Frank Cotton, and he spends the rest of the film trying to rebuild his body. And you get to watch that being rebuilt, so that's gross too. I mean, I wanted to go into criminology. Totally was getting set to
Changed
do
your
it.
mind with this one.
And then I started looking through some of the textbooks and went, yeah, I can't do it. No, I can't walk into a crime scene with a body that's been there for 3 weeks. Can't do it. I can't even watch them do operations. Like, remember the Learning Channel that used to be on cable and they would do surgeries and stuff on there?
Yeah,
I couldn't watch. I can't watch Outlander.
I know. There's a lot of moments where I'm just turning my head away.
On Outlander, I'm like looking away when she's doing some of her procedures. I'm like, oh my God. So he does this rebuilding of his body with the help of his sister-in-law, Julia, whom he'd been having an affair with. Julia has to bring men back to her house where Frank is hiding in the attic and kill them so that Frank can use the blood to build his body. The Cenobites eventually kill Frank, and his niece gets rid of the box by throwing it in a fire. It's retrieved and eventually will show up again, as there are 11 films in the Hellraiser franchise. Can't kill that thing. This was Barker's directorial debut and features Doug Bradley as Pinhead. And that's one of the most iconic characters in film. Everybody knows him with his white head and a bunch of pins coming out of it.
The actor that played Pinhead was actually such a gracious guy. He came on to the Mark and Brian radio show oftentimes to chat with them. He was just always so kind and so nice.
And you're sitting there going, how could you be such a horrible creature? He's very evil in that and very creepy. Kelly, I have to say, I think the movie that came up the most in our spectacular crew for people's favorite is this one.
And that doesn't shock me.
No.
So now on to The Lost Boys, 1987. This is one of the best vampire movies and stars Kiefer Sutherland, Jason Patric, Jamie Gertz, Diane Wiest, and the two Corys, Corey Haim and Corey Feldman. Patrick and Haim play brothers who move to a seaside town in California with their mother. Haim's character Sam meets the two Frog brothers and they tell him the town has the undead creeping around it and that they are vampire hunters. Patrick's character Michael falls for a girl named Star who brings him into the orbit of a biker gang led by Sutherland's David. The gang invites him to join and offers him to drink from a bottle which he thinks is wine. It's actually blood, and Michael begins his transformation into a vampire. This condition is reversible as long as Michael doesn't kill anyone. Michael and Sam and the Frog brothers go into the vampire lair during the day and drive a stake through the heart of one of them and run away. They prepare to fight that night with their water guns filled with holy water.
I mean, hello.
I mean, why not?
What a great idea.
Absolutely. The vampire gang attacks and all of them are killed, including David. When Michael doesn't become human again, the group realizes that David wasn't the head vampire. The head vampire is the guy their mom is dating, Max. Max wanted to make their mom the mother of his lost boys. The grandfather of the family drives into the house with his truck and impales Max with a wooden fence post. Michael is saved.
Yeah, the music and the atmosphere and everything is just very, very cool. They Live. This is another one that I have not seen. This came out in 1988. It is a classic 80s horror movie helmed by John Carpenter again. He comes up a lot here too. The film was based on the 1963 short story 8 O'Clock in the Morning by Ray Nelson and starred Rowdy Roddy Piper, Keith David, and Meg Foster. Piper plays a drifter who happens upon some sunglasses through which he could see which people in society are aliens. These aliens make up the ruling class. This class uses subliminal messages to control the masses. The film has become a cult classic probably because of an inane fight scene that goes on for 6 minutes. And of course, there's some classic dialogue in this, and one of those lines includes, "I've come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum." I'm sure everybody has probably heard that. That's the movie it's from.
Yep, I love it.
Next, we have another one that's going to start all kinds of franchises, Child's Play from 1988. Child's Play brought creepy dolls to a whole new level. This good guy doll becomes possessed by the spirit of a serial killer who reanimates the doll and continues to go on killing sprees. The story was created by Don Mancini, John LaFia, and Tom Holland, who directed, and Brad Dourif plays the voice of Chucky. Alex Vincent made his film debut as Andy, who gets Chucky as a gift. Chucky starts his murdering ways by killing Andy's babysitter. Andy gets blamed for the murders Chucky commits, and he gets institutionalized. His mother realizes shortly after that Chucky has been moving and talking without batteries.
Dun, dun, dun.
I mean, that is a classic scene when she flips him over and opens up his back, and then his little head spins around so that his face is to the back, kind of like Reagan from The Exorcist. And it's like, whoa. Chucky finds out that he needs to possess Andy to become human again, and he kidnaps him. Before he can do a ritual, Andy's mom and the cop who originally killed Chucky when he was a human save Andy, and eventually Chucky is set on fire and shot multiple times, with one bullet piercing his heart and killing him for good, until the sequel. Child's Play is a franchise with 7 films and a television series that is still, I believe it's still continuing right now. And this is our final one on the list here,
which is Pet Sematary from 1989. Stephen King wrote the novel Pet Sematary, upon which the film is based, and he wrote the screenplay. The film was directed by Mary Lambert and starred Dale Midkiff, Denise Crosby, and Fred Gwynne. The Creed family, which consists of Louis, Rachel, and their kids Ellie and Gage, moved from Chicago to Maine. Shortly after getting there, Ellie's cat Church dies, and Louis's neighbor, Judd Crandall, tells him about a place that will bring the cat back to life. Judd and Louis bury the cat in a special pet cemetery, and Church comes back, but he isn't the same cat he was before.
Actually, he's more like a typical cat.
Hey, now.
I mean, I'm not a big lover of cats. That's part of the problem. But I'm like, yeah, cats can be mean sometimes.
You like cats. You're just allergic.
I've had some pretty mean cats at places. There was one cat at a place that I was cleaning that I was terrified. If it was like on the landing, like the stairs wrapped around and there was a landing in the middle. And sometimes that cat would sit down there and I would bring treats so that I could like throw him down the stairs because I didn't want to walk past that cat because he would reach out and scratch you sometimes.
Well, yeah, sometimes they can be quite the a-hole. So there's something off and bad about him. When Gage is killed in the road, Louis does the unthinkable. He buries the small boy at the pet cemetery. Gage comes back and starts killing people, which eventually includes his mother. And, oh man, Louis does it again.
Not again, Louis. Can't you learn your lesson, man?
Clearly not. He buried Rachel in the cemetery, and she comes back, and we're left with an image that leads us to believe that Louis is about to lose his life. Poor Ellie is left on her own.
Yep. I actually read that book before I went and saw the movie. I have not actually read a whole lot of Stephen King books, but that was one of them that I did, and also Cujo, which was another movie that came out in the 1980s, but not a lot of people threw that one out as one of their favorites. But nothing like a rabid Saint Bernard. I mean, that is like too much drool for anybody. Ugh.
You know what's funny is now it's like every time I hear about Cujo, my first house in Corona, there's a Saint Bernard that lives there. And so the last time I was there staying with my friend Donna, that dog was looking out the window like my boys used to look out the window. It's a little low window on either side of the front door. There's a big old dog. I'm like, oh God, don't come out here and kill me.
Is there a Pinto around here somewhere? I'm not getting in that car.
Right.
It really is clear that the 1980s has a special place in the horror genre. So many cult classics and franchises were birthed during this time. The slasher movie really found its groove. Stephen King really came into his own at this time, too. And hell, we could throw in John Carpenter, Tom Holland, a lot of these guys. What is your favorite 1980s horror film? That is for you to decide. Oh, we hope you guys enjoyed that. I just love horror movies. I think we need to go out and watch a couple of them here. I know that our listener, Janae, she does like the 31 days of Halloween and has her own horror movies that she does. And then also Savannah was doing the ultimate. How many was she doing? Like 120 nights or something?
Yeah, crazy amount. I mean, not that it's crazy. I'd love to have the time to do it. I just don't.
Yeah, there's no way I could watch a movie every single day.
We wouldn't be producing any shows for quite a while.
Well, and I had no idea, even though we included the Children of the Corn on this, that it had so many movies. And then I looked at her list and I'm like, man, there's like 9 movies there.
Right.
There's a lot of Children of the Corn. How many times can you have the kids come out of the corn and kill people? It's amazing. Well, we hope you guys all get yourselves some Aquanet and some fun-size candy bars that are a heck of a lot bigger than they make them today.
Right.
And enjoy your Halloween. We wish we could have a Halloween party with all of you guys. Wouldn't that be cool if we could just have a big, amazing, righteous
Oh my
Halloween
God.
party in the middle of the country sometime. Maybe
That
it'll
would be
happen
awesome.
someday. All right, you guys. I've been your host, Diane.
And this has been Kelly.
Have,
Have a happy Halloween.
On the count of 3, shall you belch? Are you quite finished? Are you done
I didn't do that.
burping?
You don't even know what I was doing. It wasn't into the microphone.
Well,
So
now people do
la-ti-da.
know. I was waiting on you to finish burping so we could start this thing.
Who's the belching queen here?
I am, but that doesn't mean that you don't burp as well. I know that people think that ladies don't do that kind of thing.
We are
They
not
do.
ladies.
Well, we're certainly not ladies, that's for sure.
Many of us spend Halloween night pursuing a good scare via the medium of Phil.
Phil?
I said Phil.
Medium of Phil. Who's Phil? And what does he have to do with Halloween movies?
Headache, stop.